Diversity Committee. My name's Armida Colmenares Stafford. I'm First Vice President, Senior Relationship Manager of Pacific Premier Bank. I'm also proud to serve on the board of the Valley Economic Alliance and co-chair the Diversity Committee. A little bit about the Valley Economic Alliance. It exists to promote economic development across the 5 city regions: Burbank, Calabasas, Glendale, Los Angeles, and the city of San Fernando. We offer business assistance programs to help small businesses access capital and obtain other resources and referrals as needed. So if anyone knows anyone that may need help with that, please do keep us posted. We have free business assistance programs, and they can go to thevalley.net assistance. Now, as Erica mentioned, the Diversity Committee has been around a little bit over a year, and we're very proud of a lot of the accomplishments we have done. We have a program that does webinar presentations and training under the Onyx presentation program, which we had a couple of them in August. One of them was Fired Chat with Pay Scout on technology. And we had another one based on knowing your numbers. This month, we'll have another Adelante Business Hub, Grow Your Business. It will be a 3-part series. The first meeting was held yesterday. We had a nice fire chat with influencer and founder of My Valley Pass and myself discussing business credit. Our next ones will be part 2 will be Tuesday, September 27th, and part 3, Tuesday, October 4th. And we also have another program called the Elevate Hub, and it's kind of womenly owned businesses. And we'll have series on that later on in October or November itself. So please join us on those events. We also welcome you to join us in any of our committees. So please look at our website where you'll show the various committee programs that we have. And I think under Sonya's leadership, as well as Fred, the Valley Economics has really made a lot of progress and a lot of changes, positive changes. So we're excited about it. With that, I want to introduce now my partner in crime, my other co-chair, Carmen. Take it away, Carmen.
Yes, thank you so much, Armida. My name is Carmen Bowen. I am the Assistant Vice President for Institutional Advancement at Saybrook University. I've been in higher education for over 25 years, and I've been affiliated with the Valley Economic Alliance since about 2016. I have served as a vice chair in the past. Currently, I serve as co-chair of the DEI committee alongside Armida, and we support the different diverse initiatives and efforts that the Economic Alliance has available to its stakeholders. So thank you so very much for attending this month's meeting. And I will pass the baton back to Armida to introduce our speaker.
Well, thank you. Did you want to do the introductions of the team, the various self-introductions? No.
I'm sorry. Do you want me to do the introduction for everybody on the call, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let's get started with Erica Gass.
Oh, thank you. I'm Erica Gass with the Valley Economic Alliance, and so glad to be here and looking forward to a great presentation.
All right. Thank you, Erica. Let's do, is it Ajit?
Yes, it's Ajit Dildani. I'm an empathy strategist. I'm the founder of Empathify You. We help teams embrace empathy as a superpower for personal and organizational transformation. We have a team of therapists, psychiatrists, business strategists from around the world that come to your organizations and bring empathy strategically. I'm based in West Hills.
Wow, I have to talk to you later, Ajit. All right, Evelyn.
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so it takes me a second to unmute. Evelyn Bravo Ayala with the Office of Senator Bob Hertzberg. Looking forward to today's presentation. I saw Rebecca was on the docket, so I wanted to join and listen in. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Jackie.
Good morning. I'm Jackie Matsumoto at the Valley Economic Alliance. I'm Director of Investor Relations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, next person would be Mr. Justin Grooms.
Good to see you, Carmen. How are you?
See you too.
My name is Justin Grooms. I'm from Chariot Consulting. We do a wide variety of training, employee training, diversity, equity, and inclusion training, harassment, discrimination prevention training. We're now venturing into the executive coaching space a lot more, particularly with minority leaders in the nonprofit space. Good to be here.
Thank you so much. Myra.
Good morning, everyone. I am elected member of Venice Neighborhood Council and chair of Beautification Committee. And I am exploring everything, every Zoom invitation to see how I can apply new ideas into my committee and what can be done to beautify our neighborhoods. That's it.
Thank you so much, Myra. Emily.
Sorry, my video is not working well.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm the President Emeritus of the Asian Real Estate Association of America, founder of the Panorama Chamber of Commerce, a co-founder, and of course, other organization. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'll learn a lot from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy.
Hi, I'm just honored and excited to be here. My name is Randy Schlosser. I am a talent technical sourcer for the Walt Disney Company, specifically Walt Disney Imagineering, where everything we do, everything we think, all of our actions are all around DE&I. So very excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see, the next person would be Sonya.
Hi, good morning. I am traveling today, so I didn't want to have everybody see everything that's going on behind me, but I am honored to be here. My name is Sonya Smith Kang. I am founder and designer of Mixed Up Clothing. I am based in Los Angeles. I want to recognize and acknowledge I am on Gabrielino Tonga land. And let's see here. I also serve on a board called Multiracial Americans of Southern California, where we advocate and educate on behalf of the multiracial community. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to the speakers.
Thank you so much. Now, our speakers are going to get their own introduction, so we're going to do that in just a second, so you know we did not forget them. But one thing I would ask kindly, I think I've gotten everybody. Did I miss anybody other than Rebecca and Jan? Okay, good. So what I would kindly ask you all to do is, I see a lot of, thank you, everybody's starting to put it in the chat, your contact information, because many of us would like to reconnect with you guys. That's part of what we do here at the Alliance. So be sure and put your name and your contact information. So without any further ado, my partner, Armida, let's take it away.
Thank you, Carmen. That's always a wonderful job. At this point, I'm very excited to introduce one of our guest speakers who I had the pleasure of working with way back when in my days at US Bank. So welcome, Jan Coonley. Jan Coonley, she's an EVP, Chief People and Diversity Officer at Heritage Bank of Commerce. With 20 years of experience in human resource for the financial service industry, Ms. Coonley is responsible for overseeing the HR organization and driving people's incentive to cultivate an inclusive culture that supports the Heritage Bank's mission to be the premier community bank in the San Francisco Bay Area. She focuses on all aspects of HR, including compensation and benefits management, talent acquisition, leadership development strategies, enhancing the employee experience, and expanding diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts. Prior to joining Heritage Bank of Commerce, Ms. Coonley was head of culture and DEI for JP Morgan and Company's Consumer Bank. She previously held the progression of roles at U.S. Bank as VP of Strategy and Transformation. Ms. Coonley has served in a variety of advisors and board roles in Southern California, including serving on the Chinatown Service Center Board and Step Up Board of Directors. Ms. Coonley holds a BA degree in International Relations from the University of Davis and a Senior Professional in Human Resource designation. So thank you again, Jan, for taking time out of your busy schedule, and we look forward when we start the conversations. Take it away, Carmen.
Okay, thank you so much. And I'll go ahead and introduce Rebecca Lionheart. Now, Rebecca, make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly, because I hate that when I do it. Do a terrible job. Is it Lionheart or Lienhard?
It is Lionheart. It is not pronounced the way it's spelled. So
okay, Lionheart. I just wanted to make sure I had it. So I'd like to introduce Rebecca Lionheart, Chief Executive Officer at Tierra del Sol. Rebecca joined Tierra in 1990. Wow. Over the course of her tenure, she has championed inclusion and value for the people with disabilities through their unique contributions to our communities. She holds a master's degree in special education with an emphasis on moderate severe disabilities, and is a graduate of the University of Delaware National Leadership Institution on Developmental Disabilities. Dr. Lionheart serves as, because I work at a university, right? Dr. Lionheart serves as key spokesperson for the agency in local, state, and national venues. She has served on numerous community boards and committees, such as Vendor Advisory Committee for the California Department of Developmental Services, North Los Angeles County Regional Center, the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, Employment First Committee, and serving as Vice President of the Board of Directors for Southern California APSE, which means Association of People Supporting Employment First. She is currently serving on the board of Woodbury University School of Business. Additionally, she serves as a current member of two of California's Department of Developmental Services work groups, specifically focusing on system and fiscal reform and community resources. Through these roles, she has gained a nationwide view of services, relevant laws, and emergent trends, all in an effort to advance meaningful and inclusion lives for adults with disabilities. She has presented at numerous conferences hosted by organizations such as VEDC, their 2019 Women Business Conference, 2017 UCEDD Down Syndrome Conference, Autism Society Los Angeles, Los Angeles Valley College, Reinventing Quality, APSE, and TASH. You are very busy, Rebecca, just so you know. These experiences have equipped her to expand opportunities for people with disabilities in workforce development, customized employment, career in the arts, self-advocacy, and college career opportunities. So welcome so very much to our event today, Ms. Rebecca Lionheart.
Thank you to both of our speakers. Again, we're excited to hear you. And one of the things, keep in mind, if you guys have questions, you can put them in the chat. We will be asking some of the questions that we had already as part of our topics, but please do put questions that you have in the chat, and we will be looking at them and answering either throughout or at the end of our questions itself. So with that, let's get started. So one of the trends that we're seeing is it has switched the title from human resource officers to titles more like chief people officer? Why the trend? Either one.
I
Jan,
can
why
go.
don't you go first? Yeah.
Sure, I'll go first. It's only been a few years since chief people officer titles have come about, and a lot of that is from, I would say, my experience of the tech industry. The tech industry, it's all about the people, it's about building culture, it's about getting people engaged and believing in what they're building. And so instead of human resources, which could seem much more transactional and much more paper and administration process driven, tech companies that are startups don't really have that infrastructure. And so I think that industry made it somewhat popular. I also think from just a personal perspective of there may be some fatigue in using HR because it's been around for so long. And I remember we used to be called personnel. I don't know if you guys remember 25, 30 years ago was personnel. Then we moved to human resources. And now I think this is just a trend of chief people officer. In 10 years, it may be called something else because people will get tired of it. But essentially the function doesn't really change. I mean, if you're the chief people or chief human resources officer, you're still responsible for everything under the sun that touches people. So that's just my perspective.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jan. And I think today my efforts will be just to support kind of probably Jan's perspective of overall kind of what a chief people officer does, but under the lens of disability. Again, as you know, I've spent my entire life career in focusing on people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities primarily, people with very significant developmental disabilities, and helping them find a pathway forward. And so part of what I hope to do today is just to give you a context as to why that's part of the conversation now, and why disability should be included in our diversity and in inclusion and equity efforts. And so just to answer this question, I wanted to kind of bring the context to where most of us reside, and that's in the San Fernando Valley. Of course, you know, most of you know that we're home to a little over 1.8 million people. And we're expected to grow by 2035 to a little over 4 million residents. We're going to grow by another 1.7 million jobs by 2035. And I want to contrast that then to what the rate of disability is for people with disabilities. So a 2017 national survey indicated that the prevalence of children being diagnosed with a developmental disability was 6.99%. And of those, about 1% are diagnosed with an intellectual disability. So if you kind of just kind of impose that figure specifically in the San Fernando Valley, there's approximately 15,000 children with intellectual disabilities. Unfortunately, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is still about 80% unemployment. So if you think about that, those 12,000 children are going to grow up and face very systemic barriers to employment, jobs, lives of value, and so forth. And so about 12,000 of those individuals will grow up to be unemployed. So, you know, we obviously have a big job ahead of us to make sure that that we can break down those systemic barriers to opportunities such as employment, to the resources needed for employment. And I think that's part of that change of thinking about, we're not just managing human resources, but we're really managing people. And that when we start to really think about our communities, really reflecting who our communities really are, then we would include and really think about people of all, ethnic backgrounds, social economic backgrounds, but also diverse backgrounds such as people with disabilities. And so I just wanted to kind of bring that to this particular question.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And it's such
Now,
a different perspective, which I'm so happy to and honored to be here and learn, because I have my corporate lens, but to hear how it applies to a different industry is fascinating to me. So thanks for sharing that insight.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. One of the questions we actually have from our audience, Emily Roberts, is what are the activities of diversity and how do you promote diversity? Who wants to take it first?
Well, I think Jen and I can probably both, but again, with the eye for, again, the lens of disability. Interestingly enough, I'm preparing for today. I wanted to make sure that I saw, kind of had some, I'm kind of a data geek. I actually do have my doctorate degree, just finished my doctorate degree in organizational change and leadership. And so, I'm a bit of a data geek and I like doing that. I actually conducted my dissertation on a field study here in the San Fernando Valley, specifically looking at employers who hire people with disabilities. So that's always interesting. And I feel like we can probably bring some of that data straight back into our organizations and so forth. But SCAG, which is the Southern California Association of Governments, they just adopted a resolution. It's 20-623-2. And they offered a framework for establishing goals and strategies to advance racial equity within organizations and governments. But I also think we could look at the framework of how to advance diversity within just our own organizations. And they had 4 overarching goals in their framework. One is to shift the organizational culture, center racial equity in your policy and your planning, encourage equity in your planning practices, and then their 4th goal is to activate and amplify. So if you take it from kind of a government's kind of perspective and you look into your own specific organizations, you can see maybe how to, you can kind of see how we can maybe adopt some of those strategies for our own organizations. And then they actually had goals. So those are the overarching goals, and they had then very specific goals. And that was listen and learn, engage and co-power, and integrate and institutionalize. And so again, thinking about our own organizations, taking it from kind of a broader equity lens down into our own organizations, and even for a lens of supporting people with disabilities, you can see that if we raise the conversation to not just be racial equity, but diversity across all populations, you can see that if we start to articulate and center our policies and center our missions on those languages, that we would be able to bring that back into a more active framework within our own organization.
Very good. Thank you. Jan.
Okay, I think that's interesting. And I would say before we do any diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging work, we have to really fully understand what does that mean, because we bunch these words together and these acronyms, but they're actually very, very different when you parse out the definition. So for instance, diversity is representation. It's representation of race, gender, different backgrounds, different cultural norms, etc. And so diversity in itself is just pure representation. Equity is more of, am I getting the same or similar opportunity as someone else? So do I have access to learning sessions and development plans and to make comps, and somebody in a similar role? Is there equity in terms of me gaining access to opportunities? Inclusion is, do I feel included? So inclusion is the activation of diversity. Just because we're here and represented as diverse people doesn't mean that we're included. So inclusion is the activation of diversity, and then belonging is more of, okay, we've done all these things, how do people feel? And I stole this from Verna Myers. It's like, we're here at a dance, we're all here, we're represented, we're at a social function. Equity is, did I have the opportunity to even go to this dance? Inclusion is, hey, come on to the dance floor, and inviting people to come dance. And belonging is, well, step back. Inclusion is, but I don't know how to dance. Okay, let me teach you how to dance, or let me show you how to dance. And belonging is Elaine Bennett dancing on Seinfeld. Do I feel accepted for the way I dance? Do I feel that? And so when we're teaching DEIB courses and when we're coming up with measurements of what to measure, it's very scientific in that way. And it's purposeful, and it's not nebulous, and it's not, you know, because culture and DEIB could be somewhere in the clouds, but there are measurements and there are things that we look at to make progress so that people do have access. There is diversity. There are certain representation efforts that needs to be made. And so it's very clear for the organization, for each of the stripes, what do we do to help advance each of these areas? So that's, you know, that's how I learned. And I think it's really helped me unpack DEIB.
Thank you very much, Jen. And that was a very nice illustration of the meanings on that. With that, Carmen, I'm going to have you take it away for us now. So thank you. And ladies, thank you again, and everyone for attending. Greatly appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Armida. All right. So I have another question. Layoffs are always painful. What are your thoughts on balancing seniority with underrepresented populations? And either one of you, I know you have to take a minute to kind of marinate on it, but either one of you, go for it.
Traditionally, I think the thought is layoffs is based on seniority. First one in, last one, right. First one in, first one out. And that's really old school. That's maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago. More recently, especially in the last 20 years, layoffs are a bit more tricky. We do a matrix, for instance. We not only look at tenure, we look at experience and background. In addition to the current company, we go backwards on, you know, where was this person, what kind of experience and knowledge and skills. We look at performance evaluations. We absolutely look at the diverse category. Is this a protected class member? And then also we look at, does this person have potential in the future? So if you were to do the talent planning and the succession planning chart of the 9-box grid, is this person the top right-hand corner, which is your superstar, which is high potential and high performance. And so with that, you have some sort of calculation. Now, the calculations don't always come out even. You still have to decide sort of who to keep and who not to keep. But at the end of the day, you know, it can't just be one or two factors. You have to factor in the holistic picture to be able to make the most appropriate decision, which is extremely difficult to do because you're impacting somebody's livelihood. And that's been very, very tough from the person delivering packages to folks, for sure. Rebecca,
Rebecca, did you want to add to it?
I don't think so, only because from a perspective. So I looked at this question in two different ways. Well, first of all, I'm an employer too. So we're a smaller employer compared to Jan's employment. We have about 350 staff that we employ. And so when I looked at that, I kind of thought about, well, how did we make those decisions pre-COVID? And then of course, COVID kind of changed some of the business model for many organizations. We were fortunate enough to be able to retain all of our staff during COVID and so forth. But I know that organizations had to think about layoffs in a different way when they weren't able to open doors and so forth. And so, you know, I appreciate Jan's perspective on that. It's going to be much more systematic. I think it's just important to recognize the devastation that COVID actually had here in Los Angeles. We lost over 700,000 jobs with primarily in kind of the food service, kind of bars, drinking places being hit the worst, and still not be able to come back. You know, so for me, for a lens of disability, and it doesn't mean that people with disabilities are automatically tracked into those particular industries, but oftentimes they might find themselves in service industries, production, and so forth. And so if you think about the unemployment rate for people with disabilities at 80%, that type of dramatic job loss is going to be equally as difficult for them to get back into the workforce, especially if those environments aren't coming back in as well. So it's not really about the layoffs. It's still just about the challenges that we're really experienced during, again, this really kind of odd time in our history, right? And not just how did we apply the systematic, you know, sense of change of business and potentially restructuring our businesses based on seniority or, you know, first in, first out, last in, first out, whatever it may be, but also just kind of the impact of kind of this odd pandemic had on our business structure in general. So again, I'm not going to bring any more like really aha moments to that question, but just, you know, adding to it and again, understanding the perspective of how difficult it is for some of the underrepresented populations to actually get back into the industries that are really important for them.
Thank you so much. We have a question. Justin says, Rebecca, how do you feel about the term neurodiverse? And in your opinion, is it used correctly in organizational development?
I think that just specifically for that question, well, first of all, so you're looking for kind of a right word. I think in general, and since 2020, we've been looking for right words for a variety of things. So, you know, I don't know if we've landed on right words for a variety of cultures, ethnicities, and so forth. But I think it's a matter of recognition and understanding that we are trying to recognize a more diverse population. And so if neurodiverse is how you want to start your journey by recognizing a more diverse population, I'm very supportive of that. Generally speaking, neurodiverse, so specifically in my field, neurodiverse is going to be more attuned to people who may find themselves on the spectrum, people who cognitively are able to kind of manage, you know, kind of typical education and so forth, and have a spectrum of supports needed to be able to manage that. I specifically work with people with developmental disabilities, so of which autism and the spectrum disorder is one of them. But when I think about developmental disabilities, I'm going to see people with potentially very pervasive cognitive disabilities or kind of a combination of potentially cerebral palsy and a cognitive disability, or epilepsy and a cognitive disability. And so neurodiverse kind of limits kind of my range of definitions. But again, I think we're on a journey together, and I love the fact that we are recognizing that there's words that can be included in our culture, that can be words of acceptance and words of a journey. You know, as long as we're open to evolving those words over time to expand our definitions of what we mean by people with disabilities. Did that answer the question at all?
I think so. I learned a lot just that quickly. Yes. Now
I agree. Yeah, and it looks like Ajit works, he says he works in that space.
Oh, yes, he does. Yes. So if you look in the chat, he put a nice little explanation in there. Thank you so much, Ajit.
This would go out to whoever asked that question. Sorry. Stanford Neurodiversity Project is really, really powerful. I'm sure Rebecca is aware of the work that they do. I do a lot of work in organizations that embrace neurodiverse talent and how we deploy empathy as a strategy there. So I just put that link in there. Take a look at that. That would help. Sorry to jump in. Thanks, guys.
No, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We have another question. This is from Sonya. As a small business based in San Fernando Valley, how do you suggest bringing on adults with disabilities into our businesses? I know TDS has programs, but would love to learn more about how they are supported.
That's great. Well, again, I love answering these questions specifically as we journey into, really thinking about people with disabilities as part of our strategies. First starting with diversity, and then of course moving through all of the other, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategies that we may have. First and foremost, I think, let me just bring a data set in from just my study specifically. But again, I've been in the field for a long time, been at Tierra for a long time. I was in the field prior to coming to Tierra, so I'm super old, and I've only focused on people with disabilities since the moment I launched out of college with my bachelor's degree. So, super passionate about the work that we do. But from the time that I have been in the field, there has been some traditional and typical stereotypical myths about people with developmental disabilities. Typically, they center around the barriers, center around kind of some of our stereotypical ideas of people not being able to work, or lack of competence, concerns regarding cost of job accommodations, the need for supporting people in potentially issues as they arise at work, and so forth. And those are common myths. And interestingly enough, when I studied the employers here in the Valley, they held similar myths. Even in my organization, 32 years later, I'm like, wow, I couldn't believe it. As much work as we've tried to do to break down those stereotypical myths, they still exist today. So about 77% of the employers that I studied held those very same stereotypical myths. We've adopted a strategy at our organization to try to reverse that. And one of the ways that we're trying to do that is through we call increased positive lived experiences. And I think we're going to be able to do that with a variety of diversity needs. I think that stereotypes, biases, preconceived perceptions of what people are able to do are probably common across a lot of underrepresented populations, not just people with disabilities. And one of the third part of our strategy is increasing lived positive work experiences, because when you work alongside somebody either of any kind of diverse background, you start to move yourself from the biases of seeing a population at large and start to see people as people. And so specifically answering that, the state for people with disabilities has identified now that positive lived work experience is really a crucial bridge to bridging the unemployment gap for people with disabilities. And so they've created a paid internship model of 10,000 hours in a year's time, which is actually quite a bit. And so the thought is that if employers are interested in employing people with disabilities, that organizations such as myself can help you do that by having people go through these paid internships. And as you know, internship models are a great way for people to become comfortable with your culture, to become a culture. So by the time the internship is done, you already have somebody who's familiar with all of your policies, your programs, your resources, just your coworkers, and you have buy-in typically at the ground level. So it kind of all three tiers of your organization, not just your tier of your C-suite, not just your HR tier, or kind of that middle tier, but you also have the buy-in at your ground level tier of the direct, person-to-person buy-in of accepting that person into their department and really seeing their unique talents and values. So that's a great strategy of increasing people with disabilities into your work environments at really no cost to you, other than a willingness to identify an internship that you think would be vital to your organization, and then connecting with a disability service organization such as myself to make that placement happen. So I think that's a great strategy.
Great.
That is such learning for me, Rebecca. And from my standpoint, still trying in the corporate world to make people feel comfortable with saying, I have a disability, because sometimes you can't see the disability. And there's still, and this is not Heritage, this is not Chase or anything. This is my personal experience working at corporations. It's still a stigma for folks to feel that it's okay to say they're disabled, and for people not to react a certain way. And it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge, and it's something that, we have to continue to work on and do better. But would love to connect with you maybe at some point to pick your brain a little bit more on what other ideas. I love partnering up with a nonprofit or some agency nearby, and I would love to increase our disability. But again, people don't self-identify, so it's really hard for us to know currently who's on board on our team who are disabled. And so
Completely agree. I think that, again, disability has such a broad definition, and quite frankly, even the two of the three speakers here on the horn have a disability, right? I need to wear glasses in order for me to see my computer screen, and so forth. And it's odd. It's just part of our world, but we have accepted and okay disabilities, and then kind of the unaccepted and non-okay disabilities, yet really accommodations, supports are really what helps bridge our ability to go from, if I didn't have my glasses, and just, right here, you would look very blurry all the time. I may not be able to read your name. I may not come across as competent as, well, I'm not sure I come across competent, but I may not come across as competent as I could if I read your name clearly, if I could see your facial features, that kind of thing. And so the glasses provide that accommodation. And one of the things that we've been trying to do over time is to recognize that people with intellectual disabilities can have those bridges and those accommodations too, through job coaches, through ongoing retention supports, through natural networks that may exist already at your businesses, and bridge that as well. And so it's really breaking through our own kind of biases around what's an okay disability, and what's accepted and what's not, and they kind of broaden that and just say we're all kind of unique human beings, which goes back to that chief people officer, right? Like, we're such unique human beings that if we don't look at job descriptions as specific tasks, but rather kind of what are we asking for the performance of this? What do we really need in this job? And then how do we match skill to skill and not kind of language to language? Like, what is it that we're really looking for? And I think it helps us to kind of move in that direction of really skill-based acquisition and not necessarily paper, what we find ourselves on paper, So anyway, it's a great conversation, and I'm glad that we're able just to have that dialogue today, because it's really less about like, what can I bring, but rather how can I just, kind of invoke a dialogue that allows us to kind of think broader,
Absolutely. There's one last question in the chat, and then we could probably take, if someone wants to come on with the audio and ask anything after that. Justin has another question. He says, how does culture fit play a role into that? To me, it is a slippery slope.
Yeah, Carmen, what I was asking about the layoffs and the seniority. You know, a lot of companies I work with will hide behind they're just not a culture fit. So my question is, how does that come into consideration, or should it be considered? And that question is mostly for Jan.
It's very, you're right, it's a slippery slope, because although we're saying, hey, we want diverse backgrounds, diversity of thought, diversity of experience, but do we really? Right? And that's do you fit into this culture, this mold that we've created? And so I do not like personally the word culture fit. I always try to say you need to build your team who are different than you, who think differently than you, who have different experiences, who can challenge you. And I think you're right, Justin, that sometimes we focus so much on culture fit because we like the person or they're kind, but at the end of the day, isn't it about getting the work done and reaching a goal as a team? And how are you going to do that if everybody thinks alike and is a yes person? You can't do that. So I don't believe in culture fit. Now, do I believe that you need to get along with people and you need to have the same work style? So responsiveness and not, delaying other people. Yes, absolutely. But that's not culture. That's more of a work style. But from a culture, just a pure culture fit, I hope that answers your question from my personal perspective. I don't buy into that. It's counterintuitive or counterproductive to creating a diverse workplace.
It does. I 100% agree. I just wanted to get your opinion on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
But I'd love to add just a minute to that too, only because my study, what I did a qualitative and quantitative study, and the qualitative study actually identified that there are some actual unique cultural and leadership characteristics that do drive to a more diverse culture, specifically in those that hire people with disabilities. And so the culture characteristics were people and team-oriented cultures. So really those cultures that have moved from kind of, if you think about Ed Schein and kind of some organizational theory, move from the transactional level 1 culture to kind of level 2 relationship culture, that those organizations were more often hired a more diverse work groups, and specifically including people with developmental disabilities. And some of the leadership traits and personal traits of the leaders were that the culture had a service to all. They had an overall contribution to the larger and local community, and that they saw that a place of business had a role in that. That they had a culture of kind of a good for the whole workforce culture, and oddly enough, family-oriented values. Again, just that seemed to be kind of common cultural and leadership characteristics. But if you look at some of Ed Sheen's work, again, it's really, in my mind, kind of likening it to that kind of movement that we're seeing in more modern businesses from kind of a level 1 transactional type of culture to kind of the level 2, which is built on relationships with each other. And I think we're all trying to, the complexity of our jobs, the complexity of our work environments are really moving us in that direction, but embracing that, and then, and having that as a lens for our diversity strategies as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Wanda. This was such spirited and informative conversation, and we so are appreciative of you guys doing this. Jan and Rebecca, thank you so much for enlightening us and providing us with extra tools and answering questions that we have. What I'd like to do is just to make sure that we give our attendees an opportunity to let us know what you think. Everyone, if you hadn't put your information in the chat, please do so that we can try to connect you and send the information to you post call. Also, we are going to place the video replay into our portal at thevalley.net, and I'm going to put that right here in the chat. And that way you can go in and review it at a later time, or especially if there was a topic that you wanted to hear again. So I certainly advise you to do that when you have time. But anyway, thank you so very much. And did you want, I'll start with Rebecca. Did you have one or two parting words before we close?
No, just a humble gratefulness for you guys to want me to be able to be at your table and talk about something that I obviously am very passionate about, and the world continues to evolve. And I really appreciate the fact that we can have all of our voices at the table as we do so.
All right, Ms. Jan.
Completely agree. I don't think I have much more to add. Very honored to be here and learn from you all. I learned a lot today, and this is a journey for me, and I'll never stop learning. And so please, if you have other sessions you think would benefit me in this space, please send it in the chat, and I would love to go to a webinar or attend more sessions so I can learn from you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we want, as Armida mentioned at the beginning of the session, that we have so many different events and topics and programs at the Valley Economic Alliance. And if you'd like to attend upcoming events, please visit us at thevalley.net/events and register. And if you have some topics that you'd like to share with us so that we can support it, certainly do the same. But again, thank you so very much today to both of our guest speakers. And please join us for other events, not only the speakers, but everyone on the call. Have an amazing, productive, and wonderful day. And thank you again from the DEI Committee at the Valley Economic Alliance. Have an amazing day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.